part of the conditioning of writers as well. So what you can say, what you can't say, there are already so many limits. So to get beyond them, to free your mind from those limits is the first step. And that, I would say, is equally true of male writers as well. I know that there are, for instance, in Marathi, which is the literature that I place myself, locate myself in, where men feel that to be a male writer, they have to use a certain kind of language or write about certain kinds of issues. And you can see in the writing that there isn't first-hand experience that is directing that writing. So to be true to your experience of the world, true to your experience of yourself, I think basically if a writer does that, she is doing something not actively for society as such, but she's putting out a little bit of truth. You know, I would say that's the purpose of a writer, to put some truth out there in the world, and that truth belongs to her and her experience of the world, honestly experienced and honestly expressed. That's about it.
Thank you, Shanta. Paro, I don't think the biodata over here mentions the Sahitya Academy Award that you won. Would you like to tell the audience about it?
Yeah, I did win the Sahitya Academy Award last year for children's literature, and it was such an interesting year because my book was getting banned, and the very same book was also given the Sahitya Academy Award. And there was a lot of conversation within Sahitya Academy. The book is called Like Smoke. Like Smoke. So the book, the reason why it was such an interesting time is because Sahitya Academy themselves, within there, they were arguing that I don't think this book should be, some were saying this book should not get the Sahitya Academy, and some others really fought for it, and it was awarded. But in being interviewed after that by a newspaper, I came across a very strange statistic that the Sahitya Academy, the percentage of women who have been awarded was at one time 6.5% of women awarded for the Sahitya Academy. And then it grew to 10, but it's fallen again to 8-point-something%. Children's literature was 0% from 1957 up to 2010 or 11 when the first Bal Sahitya Puraskar was given. And I think largely that's because women have been writing for children much more, and so it's sort of doubly marginalized, doubly off the radar, as it were. So hopefully these percentages will increase now. Also, the Bal Sahitya Academy Award gets half the prize money. The president doesn't give it. So we're still very marginalized, but we're fighting.
Thank you. We have a very receptive audience, so I want to give time for interaction. So I will end with one final question which cuts across the board to all three of you. Have you at any time faced the moral police because of your writing? Starting with Shanta, I think Paro's had some experience, and yeah, on to Samira.
No, that's the short answer. Because I have never written what's considered bold. Not because I've limited myself, But I think in being true to myself, I'm not bold.
Yes, I have. At the Kala Ghoda festival in Bombay, I had to be escorted away from the back entry and kept inside a room at the David Sassoon Library for a while because I had talked about the need for talking about homosexuality in children's literature, and this couple of gentlemen were so angry that they were sort of climbing up onto the stage and I had to be taken away. My book, as I said, some parents have objected and schools have actually had to withdraw the book, although the principal said, look, I really think that kids should read it, but parents threatened the school and everything. At the Jaipur Literature Festival earlier this year, there was a group of men who had come specifically to hear me, antagonize me, and ask difficult questions, which I handled. And one of the comments that he made is that, well, rape is not such a bad crime. I mean, terrorism is much worse. So my answer to him was, well, ask a rape victim and ask her family, which is, and you'll have your answer. So at that time too, they were sort of gathering at the end of the session and were saying, Paro Anand kahan hai, Paro Anand kahan hai. And my poor husband, who was there in the audience, put on his phone so he could take photographs, was sort of all ready to do battle to protect me. But luckily then one of them said, Nini, chal, let's go from here. And they left. So yes.
Thank you, Paro. Samira.
Not particularly, no, maybe model police for the writing on with regard to women, but I last year wrote a piece for the EPW looking at Muslims, the lynching and Muslims, and this whole campaign to support the victims of lynching and Muslims in the country called Not in My Name. So we had a protest in Bombay as Delhi led the protest, but many cities in India had protests. So I wrote a longer piece responding as a Muslim writer to that in EPW, and I got trolled for some of that. I got a very, very encouraging mail. All my emails provided at the end of the thing. All the email I got was wonderful, absolutely very supportive. But somewhere on social media, when the article was this thing and the letters written to the EPW directly, some of them attacked me and talked to me. So it was more, not so much of my writing on women, but when I've written on Muslims, and talked as a Muslim voice, that has been in the recently time. But I wouldn't say compared to what Paro has gone through with other people so far, but I want to come back to the point that Shanta made about self-censoring. And I think that's true, very true. And I think in the last 5 years, I have self-censored myself. And I know there's certain things I don't want to say in the public domain. And I self-censor myself on social media. I'm very careful as to what I say and what I write about. And then, of course, you say something and you still get attacked for it. So beyond the point doesn't matter actually, because eventually, so I'm trying to be more brave, as Shanta suggesting. It's tough these days. It's very tough. But I agree with her. There's actually no other way to go but forward.
Thank you, Samira. And yes, I think we'll wind up this session in time to open it up for interaction with our very responsive audience. So thank you all of you for your warm and vibrant responses. So we'll open it up for discussion. Any questions to our three delegates? Yes.
It's an exercise which has never failed on me. But they didn't know how to jodo one sentence to the next sentence. They couldn't do it. These were all children who had lost their fathers. Some had lost multiple family members. Some had seen the incident, the hadsa as they call it, in front of them. So they were severely traumatized children. And so I gave them a story starter of Achanak Meri Zindagi Mein, suddenly in my life. And I said, take the story anywhere. Of the 50 children, one girl wrote a lovely story about how Aishwarya Rai falls and breaks a leg, and Zareen becomes the substitute heroine and goes on to be a heroine. Another was about a childhood incident, about an encounter with a snake. 48 others were locked away in bathrooms and rooms and weeping as they wrote. It was the first time they were putting words to the hadsa where their fathers died. It was also the first time that the Kashmiri Pandits, we had brought them back to the valley to interact with the Kashmiri Muslims. And interestingly, the Hindu kids were referring, one of them wrote, Jab bhi main ek, good, is it okay if I speak in Hindi, in his exact words? Jab bhi main ek buzurg Kashmiri ko dekhta hu, mera dil karta hai main uska qatl kar dalun. I feel like killing every old Kashmiri because he has pushed me out of my home. I am rotting in refugee camps while he is living in great pleasure in his home. But what did happen is that the Kashmiri children, when they started reading their stories, what came across was they understood that it was both ways, that it was violence and not a religion which had killed their parents, and it was very liberating for them, the whole exercise.
Yes, yes,
I would like to address this to Samira and ask you a little bit about the afterlife of the book which you have written, Why Loiter, because I think there have been many activities which are related to that, especially the acts of reclaiming public spaces in Bombay, and we've heard some wonderful things. So if you could tell us a few of those.
So the book, interestingly, has developed a very interesting afterlife, not prompted by the authors. So people who read, young women who read the book, have started movements called Why Loiter movements. In Bombay, there's a very active one started by a woman who's a theatre actress who read the book and said, "It transformed my life. I didn't think that sitting in the municipal park or accessing outside space was so important." She started doing it, her friends, and they started asking others. So all kinds of people loiter on different days of the week, or on the weekends. They play cricket in the gully, they play football on the beach in Bombay. They do different things. They go do midnight walks. They walk through parts of the city. I joined them once between, I think, 12 at night and 3 in the morning. They have interesting encounters with off-duty cops and men on the roads. They have conversations with them. They've done extremely, I have to say, brave things, because many of us didn't see. But the readers of the book have taken. There's a group in Pune, very active in Pune. There's a group in Jaipur, which is actually older women who decided to go to Daru ka theka and sit and say, "This is our place." And the men kept saying, "We'll wrap the Daru, madam, aap ghar le jaiye." They said, no, we want to sit here and drink with you. And she said, the men stopped drinking. They said, "No, we can't drink properly if you're sitting there." And these are all 40 plus women. Most of the city is younger women. It's younger women doing it. We do a campaign. So there's a lot of active work done by younger women. It's part of inspired other movements in some ways or the others. A lot of people from those movements are in touch with us. So Pinjra Tod in Delhi, which is about girls' hostel rules, that why do girls' hostels have different rules and timings. They have a very active campaign, or not just Delhi University, Banaras Hindu University has joined in. They've called us several times to go. I have to say we have to make it to BHU one day. We've been called. In Trivandrum, there's been a movement with the College of Engineering. The girls sat out all day, all night on the hostel because they didn't want to go in at 6 o'clock in the evening. That's what the group. The boys go, in at 11 and 12, and the girls go at 6 to 10. Many of these hostels have been 6:37. Maulana Azad Urdu University in Hyderabad, the girls tore up their attendance registers. So these were all inspired in some ways, but they're also independent movements. They're very inspiring for us. There's another movement, there's been so many. In fact, the most marvelous thing is the synergies between different movements and being in touch with each other. So Happy to Bleed is the taking on menstrual taboos. There's a movement about girls entering temples or being able to access dargahs. There's a whole thing of Muslim. There are many exciting things happening. So at the same time, we talk doom and gloom of girls in this all. There are lots. Young women today are leading the most exciting struggles in this country. Very often to face the wrath of definitely hostel authorities and university authorities who've not been very cooperative at the beginning, and they've had to push against those walls. also families. They've had to push against their own families, but they are leading them, and they are sort of leading very exciting struggles. And so while there are many Why Loiter groups now across the country, so and that's been exciting. We also have a hashtag Why Loiter campaign in December, from December 16th to Jan 1st, where we ask people to loiter wherever they are and post it on social media. And we've had reactions from Tehran and all kinds of places we didn't expect. We were leading out to Indian women, but there were women all across the globe who felt they don't do this. They don't do this in many Western countries as well, to that extent. So they do it in some places. So all kinds of things, including I think I really want a favorite is a 65 woman from Calcutta who wrote in and sent her, and she said, these men meet at the corners and all this drink. There's thing, and they have this adda going on. And we women were always told growing up that you can't, you can do it in the house, but you don't want to hang out in the nukkad. And she said, my whole dream was to sit at that thing and have the chai there. And so she said, I got inspired. I saw it on Facebook, everybody was posting pictures. So she said, so I went off, sat down, and everybody looked at me, but I just did it. And I said, okay, I've had my loitering moment. So she said it was so liberating to say that I could, of course, sit there. So there was, of course, gender was also class in that. So there was all kinds of other combinations. It's not just gender. I mean, our book does play that there are many other accesses also we need to cut through it. It's not just, so, yeah.
Any other questions? Yes?
This question is actually directed to Mrs. Indu. I believe you started a writers' club around 50 years ago. I'd like to know, I'd like you to tell everyone what the name of it was.
I'm supposed to say she's your granddaughter, by the way.
I'm not okay, I'm not supposed to, sorry. Okay. I started this group called the Nilgiri Arts Group, yes, I'm guilty of that. And we started by, a group of poetry lovers. I wanted to start a poetry reading club, and my dear friend, late friend Minnie Edelji, I said, how do we go about it, Minnie? She said, just come with whatever poetry books you have at home, Indu. And then she invited about half a dozen poetry lovers, and that was the genesis of it. And after that, we kept meeting mostly in my home over a cup of tea, high tea really, and then we discussed books, novels, poetry, and the plays, and we staged plays. And I have to laugh at myself at this, and I would take a play, localize it, satirize it, Indianize it, and it would bring the roof down. Nothing very highbrow, but we had a lot of fun. And I must say, this continued, this morphed into a larger group. I can't see any other members of that group. Pushpa's not here. And now it's dwindled down. It's generally it's become a dialogue between my poet friend Tanya and myself, because it's too much of an effort to get this going. But the OLF, well, this has given us a nice forum, and I think we should, I should revive it. Thank you, Lasya.
That it's harder for women in the writing industry as compared to men, and how do you think that it's changed over time? Like, was it harder before as compared to now? Like,
this is for the panelists.
Anyone?
Is it harder for women in the writing?
Women, in fact, again, I'll confine myself to my language. Women have been in the forefront of writing for years and years. Publishers have always been very keen to publish them because I think by and large there have been more women readers than men readers. So just as television channels find it good business to have all these Saas Bahu type serials, similarly, publishers liked publishing women's literature. So as far as Marathi is concerned, we've been on velvet.
Just to add to that though, personally, no, I've never had any problem getting published or whatever in this industry. But remember that J.K. Rowling had submitted her manuscript as Joanne K. Rowling, and the publishers felt that it would cut out half the population because boys would not read a book written by a woman. And if they kept it gender neutral by calling her J.K. Rowling. And in fact, I was interviewed on NDTV when the Harry Potter phenomena came up. And the interviewer kept saying, he, the writer, he. And I said, no, it's a woman. Her name is Joanne. So from George Eliot to Joanne Rowling, maybe that much hasn't changed as much as we hope or as much as we have experienced.
Any other questions? We have been given 10 minutes more, so yes.
Okay. Talking of self-censorship that Shanta and Samira spoke, doesn't it affect your creativity?
Yeah, precisely. It does. It affects the quality of your writing. There is something false about it. So self-censorship, I don't believe it, but I can see social reasons. I spoke about it yesterday, that people do